Ms. Only, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me go ahead and call the special meeting to order. You may recall in the previous meeting where we, in terms of the meeting we had for the.
You want to take the roll, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ms. Only, please call the roll first. Thank you.
Malinowski,
Here.
Dickerson, McBride, Livingston,
Present.
Terracio,
Here.
Walker, Kennedy, Manning,
I'm here.
Myers, Newton.
Here.
McBride is here.
I just got here.
All right, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. The purpose of this meeting is a follow-up to our meeting on October the 6th regarding council's motion to, and I'll read the motion specifically. To move as follows, reference the Mine Place location. It said the license will be revoked until November 3rd. Between now and November 30th, we will work out a 6-month condition probation plan. If the business meets the requirements during this period of time, the license will be reestablished. And the reason why we've done this today is because we will not meet again prior to November 30th. So that's why I suggest have a quick special call meeting. Now, you should have received today, Mrs. McBride, myself, Mr. Polis, and Mr. Cowan, and Ms. Davis are the ones who've gotten feedback from and had discussions with reference to this matter, Ms. McBride and I. And what we sent to you was some possible stipulations to consider for an agreement. If they're to stay open, and you have a list where from the Mr. Polis and that group, and you also have a few things that I picked up and got from our discussions with Mrs. Davis at business service area. So what I wanted us to do is to agree to some stipulations that we can put in place as per our motion. What I would like for you to consider is if we would allow myself and Ms. McBride to get with business service area, Mr. Brown, and legal, as well as the sheriff department, and come up with some kind of agreement, legal agreement to present to you.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I apologize. Did we adopt the agenda?
No, I didn't have the agenda with me, but thank you. No, I did not. Let me go ahead on the intent motion to adopt the agenda. I just stated what the agenda was, but I'll take the motion to adopt. Thank you, Ms. Newton. When you do that, for make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second adoption of the agenda?
Second.
It's moving properly. Second for the adoption of the agenda. Mrs. Only, can you call the roll for the adoption of the agenda that I don't have with me right now? Unfortunately.
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yeah, I haven't seen the agenda, but I'll say yes.
Yeah, you were forward one.
Dickerson,
Oh,
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Manning, Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to Ms. Newton. And the point I was making is we provided some stipulations for consideration for some type of agreement. And what all I wanted to do tonight was for council to have an opportunity to have some input and then allow again, myself, Ms. McBride, as well as legal, as well as the sheriff department, and well as the business service area, to just get together and come up with a document considering all these different stipulations or anything that council members want to add to these or think ought to delete is the main basis of the meeting. So we can meet the 30th deadline that we stated. Any comments, feedback?
Mr. Livingston?
Yes.
Mr. Livingston, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you and Major Paulus and Chief Cowan and Sheriff Lott and other staffs and our business department and our community businesses where the My Place nightclub is located, as well as the constituents that live, the residents that live in that area. Over 3,000 are directly involved, are within close proximity to My Place. And to thank for them, the members, many of the leaders in the community felt that there was a lack of respect for their neighborhood, and particularly this being a Black community, that they have experienced so much crime and that little faith was given into their consideration of what they felt that was needed to ensure the safety of their community. So I thank you for the opportunity now that those that worked on the information that was emailed to them, we have worked with the sheriff's office and we concur with the stipulations that they have recommended through our discussions. There are letters from businesses and communities that are directly involved, are surrounding My Place. In addition, I have talked to 5 different neighborhood presidents and residents within this community having these concerns and mentioned some of the areas. And so with that, I would hope that council gives full consideration to the recommendations being made. In addition, because we had until November the 30th to make a decision, and I know that you're going to see if we can have another special call meeting, but I would personally like to ask that the 6th probationary period, based on the motion that was already passed, would not would start January the 3rd, 2021. And that is a request that's coming from the residents and the neighborhood associations within District 3 that are in close proximity to My Place.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Any questions from council members, and then the sheriff or the business services on the line, or whoever else need to respond to what's presented? Council members first, any questions or clarification?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Terracio, you recognize.
thank you. In looking over these stipulations, I can't help but notice that these are the recommended minimum stipulations. I would be curious as to other less than minimum, more than minimum stipulations that the sheriff's department would have suggested.
Mr. Polis or Mr. Cowan, you want to respond to that?
Sure. Good evening, council members. Appreciate your all's time tonight. Our point in pointing out that these are the minimum is that we've looked at all the information that was that led to the closure of the business, and we've determined that anything less than what is on this document that we've provided would just not be sufficient to keep people from getting hurt. Anything more stringent obviously would be helpful. I can't think of anything off the top of my head more stringent than what we've provided at this time, but certainly anything that this council has to offer, we would be helpful. It would be helpful to make it make the whole situation better.
Thank you. Ms. Terracio,
Sure. And then just reading through them, no patron parking at adjacent businesses. And then I read the letter from the business that said, they put up signs, they've towed people, and yet there were still parking. So I'm just curious as to, you know, when we say no patron parking, I mean, how are we going to know that that's not happening or reinforce that? Or is this just like, if they get caught letting it happen, then that's going to immediately shut them down again?
I'm sure the businesses will let them know too, that sheriff department know too.
Sure, sure.
In addition, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. McBride.
in addition, they would be meeting on the third Tuesday of every month. So they would have the opportunity to discuss concerns and to look at how to address those. Thank you. That's part of the stipulations.
Any further discussion? And again, this is just a response to the motion that was passed by council, remember?
Mr. Chair,
This did you recognize?
thank you. And again, thank you for all of the work that you've done working with the community, working with law enforcement to get these stipulations. They all are pretty reasonable to me. I did have a question about two of them. One of them was the one that was just addressed by Councilwoman Terracio, and that's no patron parking at adjacent businesses. I'm not sure how we could possibly ask them to enforce what other people do. I know that I have been at many establishments where people sometimes park someplace next door where they're not supposed to. When I used to volunteer for the library book sale, people would park next door at the comic book store, and it was a constant thing where we asked people not to, but we're not in charge of them. And if they are running the inside of the club, I'm not sure if it's fair to expect them to stop responsible adults from violating posted non-parking signs. So I do have a few concerns about that, and if there's a way to address the language, because certainly we want them to tell their patrons not to park there. I'm just not sure if we can hold them accountable if people do. And then my second and last concern was, it said that if they violate any of these terms, that their business license would immediately be revoked without a second hearing. I'm not sure that they need to have a second hearing. I think we're asking them to show good faith that they are fulfilling the terms of the agreement. But some of these requirements that we have on our list are, you know, you'll submit paperwork or you'll do this or that. And I think that there does need to be some avenue for a person to say, hey, you asked me for this information, you said you didn't get it, but I can show you that I got it. There has to be something that allows people to have a reasonable conversation to address a concern before they're automatically shut down. Again, I don't think it has to necessarily be a second hearing. I just want there to be some sort of mechanism, because sometimes when you're dealing with humans, things are imperfect. So I'm not sure if that's clear what my concern is there, but those are the two concerns that I have about these conditions.
If I could speak briefly to the parking issue, their parking lot, ma'am, it could not park more than 10 to 15 cars. So, and their occupancy for the building itself is a maximum of 65 people. And I'm not even sure, honestly, how you're going to get 65 people in and only 10 to 15 cars. So our position is that it is posted. The All South parking lot allows no parking after hours. The BP has worked with the Sheriff's Department in not allowing My Place patrons to park in their parking lot, as well as the insurance company that's also adjacent to the BP. So we feel like the parking is obviously one of the main contributing factors to what led to a lot of issues we were having before. It would be fairly simple for the owners of the business to ask their patrons as they're coming in, or see where they're parking. It's really not that big as far as the parking is concerned. And what was your second? What is the second thing you wanted me to speak to? What would be the recourse?
Sure. Well, first, on the parking, and again, I hear you. I guess I'm just saying that the club operators are not actually the people that are driving the vehicles, and so to make them responsible for the actions of other people who are clearly violating those signs, I'm just not sure how we can do that. But my other question was, and again, because this is a legal agreement that we're making where we're going to shut down somebody's business, the way that I'm reading the second list is, you know, if you don't do any of these things, your business is immediately closed. And I agree that if they violate the terms, that it needs to be closed, but there's no I don't see where there's any sort of arbiter here, because you said you can't have another hearing. Okay, fine. But if I feel like I did close at 11 and you feel like I didn't close at 11, I mean, do you automatically shut me down? Do you let me show you my camera footage? I'm just trying to have some sort of mechanism so that the people who are, there's some sort of recourse, so that it's not just this automatic thing, so that they have a way to present their information. And then we can say, nope, you know what? You didn't do it. We're shutting you down.
Yes, ma'am. I understand your concern. We've always been very thoughtful in how we've executed some of the things that we've done when working with the bars and nightclubs. The whole point of the monthly meeting is to address issues along the probationary period. So we would have an opportunity to discuss these things with the owners and the managers prior to taking such an extreme remedy as putting the padlock or back on the business. So that was the whole point of the idea, to have a monthly meeting with the owners, just to make sure that there's any misconception or miscommunication about what's going on. It would not be a surprise before we just showed up and shut them down arbitrarily. So that is the whole point with the monthly meeting, is to make sure we have open lines of communication with the owners and just make sure that there's no miscommunication. So it wouldn't be us versus them. They would understand what led to the closure again. And if I could go back to something real quickly that Ms. Terracio asked earlier, what would be if these were the minimum, what would be the maximum? Obviously, the sheriff's position, the agency's position is that this business should not be open, period. Like the worst thing, that could happen to them, the maximum penalty would be to remain closed. So I just wanted to touch back on that. Thank you.
And if I could just respond, I hear you and absolutely believe in your willingness to work and be reasonable. It's just not written here. And so if you were creating some sort of legal framework that doesn't say, these are things we're going to be discussing in the monthly meetings, et cetera, I just wanted to reflect more clearly that we're not going to arbitrarily and capriciously do this. Again, I don't think that you would, but if we're creating some sort of legal framework, if it says that you can, then you can. And shutting down a business permanently is an extreme remedy. And so I just want to make sure, not just for this case, but we're setting a precedent for what we do for future things. And so perhaps my question maybe isn't for you, maybe it's for Chairman Livingston or for legal, in terms of the terms that we're looking at right now. Is this just a framework that you're asking us to approve so that you can go and negotiate it? Or are these the terms that are legally binding? Because if we're going to go back and negotiate it and flesh it out, then having my concerns heard is frankly enough for me.
That's a good point, Ms. Newton. That's why I mentioned earlier that this is something I wanted to take back after discussion with council, to take back with legal and the sheriff department and all of us, to try to hash out something based on the feedback we're getting now. That was the whole purpose, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So yeah, we'll go back and look at these things as we draft some type of document. Any other things you want us to consider as we start to finalize the document?
Mr. Manning.
Mr. Manning, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so that I'm clear in regard to the discussion, this is a special meeting, called meeting, as a follow-up to our previous council meeting on this matter that indicated that we'd have such a meeting, and that this is, just so I'm clear, this is my place, AKA Club Blaze at 7720 Claudia Drive. And when you're talking about stipulations, would I be clear in that stipulations will be a condition or a requirement that's specified as a part of an agreement? And when you're talking about you and Councilwoman McBride, would that be because you're the chair of the county council and Miss McBride because it's in District 3? Am I
Yes,
clear with all that?
that's correct. Yeah, that was the reason.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McBride?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, given the work that was done, and Major Polis really worked hard on this as well as all the other people I mentioned initially, it was my belief that these were the recommendations that we were bringing to the committee in terms of the next step. Now,
Right.
to the council rather. Now, if the council wanted to add something to that, then this is the opportunity. But for us to go back and come back and forth, I think that that's why the council set up the little committee or the ad hoc for us to work on. That's my interpretation. And also that none of the decisions, I don't think, nothing about this is capricious. And in terms of, I think that we put in the monthly meetings, but should there be an incident that would occur prior to those meetings, I'm sure that that's why that was set up, that there will be discussion with the owner. I guess they call it a business. My community won't call it a business, and they live with it every day. And let me mention this while we're discussing that since that nightclub, if that's what we're going to call it, has been closed, there have been less criminal activity in that area, and the community is so relieved that they don't have to deal with it. It's fortunately that you all don't have it in your community, so you don't know what they're going through. So I thank God that they don't have to deal with it right now. And I hope that we will remain closed until January the 3rd, and then that we would put the stipulations that have been given to you tonight in place. And don't forget to read the other letters that are attached. So I thank you.
I have Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, at our first meeting, and I don't have the benefit of the minutes from that meeting, what was stated regarding an agreement taking place? I thought it was November 30th because that's why we're having this meeting, because it was
Right.
30th.
It
But-
said November 30th.
But now I'm hearing January 3rd, which puts it more than 30 days into the future beyond that. And if the council already had voted on it and agreed to November 30th, it seems like we're not operating in good faith by just arbitrarily pushing it back. Can you confirm that for me, please?
Well, we said we'll come back on November, by November 30th, we would try to hash out an agreement for their consideration. We can still have that before November 30th if we can agree on some of the terms now.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, responding also to Mr. Malinowski, I agree with you that November the 30th, we are supposed to come back with a recommendation as to how to proceed. And that's why I offered the January 3rd.
Any further questions, discussions from staff or council members?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Sorry,
Was that
just
Ms. Lee?
procedurally. Yes, thank you. And thank you for hearing my concerns, which again, I support the stipulations that are here. I just didn't know if there could be some additional language around the two areas that I mentioned. But my question is, are you looking for a vote here procedurally? What happens after this meeting today?
Yes, I'm going to ask for a vote after this meeting for us, based on the comments from council and what you have here, to draft a document and we'll send that out to all the council members prior to the 30th.
And then would we vote again on that? Again, I'm just trying to understand what happens.
Yes, yes, we can vote on that again, yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I was under the impression that we would look at these stipulations and we would vote on what is being presented with the understanding that if there were any changes being made, that we would take those changes into consideration, discuss it with legal, and bring it back for the final.
yeah, that's what I was attempting to say, yes.
Okay. So do we need a motion to?
Yeah, it'd be nice to have most of that effect, so we're doing.
So we need a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, that'd be helpful.
Okay, so we need I move that we accept the stipulations provided to you in the letter from Major Harris, as well as the 3 additional MyPlace stipulations in the other email from Mr. Livingston and I, and that all of us have agreed upon, those that are working on the committee, of these recommendations, and that council accept those recommendations with the understanding that we would take additional input from council and take this back to our legal office and bring it back to council for full approval.
And that would include addressing Mrs. Newton's concern regarding parking, as well as I think what she's getting at is some sense of appeal.
A procedure. Mhm.
Second.
So you recognize?
Oh, I was trying to second Ms. McBride's motion.
Okay, all right, thank you. It's moving properly second. Any further discussion? Now,
Mr. Chairman. Oh.
Yeah, big thing, Mr. Chair. I don't recall seeing, Ms. McBride mentioned 3 other items that you and her had sent out. Could I get a date on that email, please? I don't recall seeing that.
Yeah, they were on there, but you want me to just read it real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of them said, the agreement will also, in other words, it would not only include these things, it would also include those things that are a regular part of the business license ordinance. So we don't want them to say, well, I didn't violate any of these, but we're also saying you make sure this also includes other items within the current ordinance.
Okay.
And then the other one is the 6-month period starting in January, as opposed to the 30th of November. And a second hearing is not, if there's a violation, a second hearing is not required.
And Mr. Livingston, isn't that part of the law, the ordinance?
I don't know for sure. I just want to make sure, though.
Based on Ms. Newton's request, that would have to be tweaked a little bit, that language.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And now remember, now that language did say you couldn't do something. It said it's not required. In other words, we don't want the company to assume that they automatically can have another hearing with council if something is violated. That was the point. That was the point we're trying to get at.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chairman.
Man.
I believe Councilwoman McBride said Major Harris.
I'm sorry.
Just so it's technically correct in the motion, that'd be Major Polis.
Major Polis. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just don't want us to get caught up on some technicality when we have a lot of attorneys involved.
Any other discussion after the motion?
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, the Ombudsman, Judy Carter, appears to be trying to connect for about the last 15, 20 minutes. Was she having some input into this, or is she just trying to get?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions about the motion? If not, Ms. Owen, I'll ask you to call for the vote for the motion.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson, McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terratio,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That's all to come before us. The meeting's adjourned. Thanks so very much. Well, I'll take a motion on that too. Chair, take a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Moving properly second, Ms. Only can you call the roll for adjournment?
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson, McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terratio,
Yes.
Manning, Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.